you decentralize. You don't put your faith into any one entity. That can be upgraded. The politics can change, and I think that the main goal here is to create a system where the greedy parts of our system are like satisfied while doing the right stuff. So if we have like network satisfied with the cost cuts and UX upgrades, stakers satisfied, they're getting rewards that are satisfactory to them, we'll get an actual security that is sustainable.
Hey everyone, this episode is brought to you by Namada, the shielded asset hub rewarding you to protect the multi-chain. So not only can you protect your own data across any asset and any chain, but you also get shielding rewards for strengthening data privacy protections for everyone. So you can check them out at namada.net and follow their mainnet launch. Stick around, you're going to be hearing all about them later in the program. Hey everyone, this episode is brought to you by Kinto, the safety first L2, which is accelerating the transition to the on-chain financial system. They've got some very cool features like user-owned KYC and native account abstraction, which solves a bunch of the onboarding and bottleneck problems that many L2s suffer from. So you're going to be hearing all about them later in the program. But if you want to learn more and better, if you want to join their launch program, Engen, E-N-G-E-N, you can click the link at the bottom of this episode. Go check them out. Tell them I sent you.
All right, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Bell Curve. Before we jump in, quick disclaimer. The views expressed by my co-host today are their personal views, and they do not represent the views of any organization with which the co-hosts are associated with. Nothing in the episode is construed or relied upon as financial, technical, tax, legal, or other advice. You know the deal. Now, let's jump into the episode.
All right, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Bell Curve. Today, I'm joined by Misha, the co-founder at Symbiotic. Misha, welcome to the show.
Hey, everyone.
Hey. Misha, this is a really special episode. I am really excited to get into the ins and outs of Symbiotic, which I think a lot of people are very excited to hear you talk about. But first, I want to actually give folks a little bit of a sense of your background as an OG, as it were, in the space of shared security. And one of the first things that you pointed out to me as we were discussing, we've talked a little bit in past episodes about previous iterations of shared security, is that I actually got something wrong, and Polkadot was not the first implementation or iteration of shared security. And it's actually an idea that predates Polkadot. So can you give us a sense of what that is? And you actually worked on Polkadot yourself at some point. So just give us a little bit of a sense of your history and background and perspective in this space of shared security.
Well, the space of shared security started a long time ago. I think in 2010 or 11. The idea of shared security, like the general idea, is pretty simple. You have some resource that provides security for one network. And how do you overuse it? How do you use it more efficiently? Can you help other networks that are like just starting up to get some portion of that security? The idea was, I think, introduced with the merge mining in 2010 or 11. That they have a lot of implementation. It wasn't really successful, but the general idea is that you have like a lot of hashing power for, say, Bitcoin. And you use it to secure some like child network as well, by using inscriptions, by using like some nonce aggregation or something, you get a lot of hashing power and you get a lot of stability, and the resources are used optimally. After the proof of work, it went to proof of stake, and shared security idea migrated with that as well. So the implementations were like varied. We had Polkadot that was doing relay chain, where parachains just inscribe some information to the relay chain, and that's how they like provided the base layer of security. After that, we had maybe in 2022, we had cross staking from as a continuation of idea of ABC for Cosmos. uh, IBC. Yeah, after that, like every protocol, like not every, but like a lot of protocols have some form of shared security, even if it's like really narrow. We can even talk about the shared security being used for like other security or safety module. That's basically you restake your governance tokens that are already protecting and voting on the governance decisions, and you reuse them like again to secure the protocol against some bad debt or other eventualities. So yeah, it's not new. I first came across it when we started developing the liquid staking protocol on Polkadot. Like we were basically the first ones to use XMP. That's protocol that was the killer feature for Polkadot, the protocol of exchanging messages between parachains and the relay chain. So yeah, we were excited about that back then, but we were a bit cautious in terms of the demand side for Polkadot. I think that's that's basically the history lesson of like where it started in my view.
Misha, can for listeners who might not be as familiar with the construction of Polkadot, we've talked about it a little bit at a surface level on this season so far, but you are obviously much more in the weeds and directly involved with the creation. So can you just walk us through, because I think in many ways, Polkadot actually got an enormous amount of stuff right about just frankly, the contour of how blockchains are being designed today and shared security. So can you like put us in your shoes at that time of actually working on Polkadot? What were some of the core components of the protocol? How did you conceive of, what were you looking at in terms of the shared security design? And then maybe also critically, what do you think you got wrong with the benefit of hindsight? I heard you just say something about maybe being wrong on the scale of anticipating demand, which is something that we've talked about on the show so far. But yeah, just put us in your shoes of helping design that protocol back then and explain to us the parts.
Yeah, we haven't designed the protocol, just to be clear. We designed the liquid staking solution on Polkadot. Like we weren't. Yeah. So for us, from our point of view, like I wouldn't say that they got like anything wrong. For the time, it was really something interesting. Then the rollups came along that were like solving a lot of the same issues. So I think that was like the overall idea that you have one chain that is really simple. It's a transactional chain that's going to be really secure. No logic that is excessive on it, just transfers and like messaging. And you have like logic elements being done outside by every parachain. So the parachains, they had this architecture of parachains committing information, checkpoints, designed varied, but some information to the relay chain, and then like this information can be verified by the validators that are outside of the relay chain. So you could have like proof of stake, proof of authority, some other primitives that we see reoccurring actually now. The primitives that we won't have any MEV if validators are pool stakers themselves. This shows like a straight up continuation of the ideas that we saw there being reimagined right now.
I do think that proof of authority, used to be called something like private blockchains or enterprise blockchains or something like that. And I do think that we've gotten a little bit of a brand uplift, and these are now proof of authority chains, and people are much more interested in the design space of these proof of authority chains, I think, than they were back then. But
yeah, can I add something? Yeah, I worked worked on projects for Quorum. It was like another interesting idea. Like Quorum was a fork of Ethereum for enterprise. It was developed by, I think, Morgan Stanley or
JP Morgan.
JP Morgan, yeah. Like that, if they got the term proof of authority back then, it would like be much more successful, I think.
They just didn't have the right marketing term. That's it. Just a couple more marketing terms in crypto and then up only. Okay, so Misha, take us through what, from your perspective as well. Obviously, I think Polkadot was way ahead of its time in terms of some of these overall design decisions, but what did it maybe get wrong in terms of shared? Again, not to cast any blame here. Obviously, protocols get many things wrong, but why didn't it sort of take off from your perspective?
Well, no, again, I don't want to be negative that the market circumstances change. Some protocols are I think protocol the problem there that they were a bit early and in the demand on the demand side and way too late on the delivery side. If I could point out two difficulties that they encountered because they were developing Polkadot for a long time.
Yeah.
And when they started, the proof of stake system was super novel, and the basically the secured sharding that you can call Polkadot, right? Was the super novel ideas as well. And when they were actually deploying, we had roll-up architecture already being produced, and a lot of other primitives that solved for a lot of problems that app chains. We had Cosmos doing a lot of stuff with IBC. So they started from the point of no competition at all and deployed where there were a lot of competing ideas.
So Misha, I want to start to transition into the title of this. The title of this podcast is a fresh take on shared security, and I want to get a sense of I want to start drilling down into what that means for you, because I think a lot of folks have a relatively there have been these previous iterations, whether it's Polkadot, whether it's shared interchain security over in Cosmos land, and I would say the newest iteration of this is restaking on Ethereum, which is sort of pioneered by EigenLayer. And people probably have a pretty specific conception of that. And I want to get your sense of zooming out of that. What are we doing here with shared security? And, what is your take on what it overall is? And then maybe we can get into some of the specifics about how Symbiotic, rather the platform, is designed a little bit differently.
Yep. Well, we are soon to be out of prefixes to staking because we had cross staking for Cosmos for a long time. Then we had restaking. Now what's going to be next? E-staking, maybe electronic staking or something. I don't know. The words they mean basically the same thing. People are trying to solve a problem. The problem is that it's really hard to decentralize. You go through you had a brilliant idea. You imagine some system that is going to be really innovative and will solve a lot of problems. But you get to a point what's the weakest link in the system, and usually it's operators. How do you create a system that is decentralized enough and trusted enough in the trustful part that you can get $1 billion or $10 billion secured by it? If it's proof based, you still you're still subject to censorship, and you're subject to how do you upgrade your network? If you have the upgradable contracts or upgradable system, you need somebody to have a consensus on that. So from the start of the idea to the point where you actually are ready, to be safely accepting people's funds or managing it or doing some vital parts being an oracle, it takes a long time ago. Well, it takes a long time to achieve. So the idea behind shared security is how do we make it easier? The one part is that we can provide economic security. How do we do that? We already have networks that have a lot of monetary value. Let's reuse their tokens. let's provide it to some protocol to start with them, and then move or add their own token if they want to for like some critical parts of it. Okay, this part is easy. Like you take one token and use it multiple times. It's called cross v any other flavor of staking. The other part is like way less pronounced, but in my view, it's like even more important. How do you create a pipeline for every participant to be scored properly, to be onboarded properly, to go through these hurdles without creating a super sophisticated system, an incorruptible validator master, and like going through like how do we shorten this go to market by like 6 to 10 months without and make it safer at the same time. This is the actual problem for shared security to solve. Yeah. So basically two of these parts.
Okay, Misha, I want to get into that. So when people think of, I think restaking today, they largely gravitate around that first bucket that you outlined, which is economic security. And that's what all these debates have been had. And that's what Anatoly and Solana doesn't think very highly of. And Shriram, they've been going back and forth a little bit. But this other aspect here, which is how do you actually sort of pipeline and streamline the creation of these chains, which rely on some amount of different operators? Like that is the question that it seems like your conception of shared security is getting at. And I think this has been a challenge that folks who are more familiar with Cosmos land are extremely familiar with, right? Because there's part of this is, hey, I actually love that Sam Hart, who's been on the show a number of times, has talked about this, where it's actually it's not super difficult to go out into the world and find people that will actually, run the boxes for your particular chain. At this point, it's not even particularly difficult to go and source external means of value, right, to secure that chain. But then there are all of these other things that are very difficult that need to happen to make sure that you're getting the right set of validators, that they're incentivized over a long period of time, etc. So can we focus on that particular portion of the box here, or that particular part of this discussion? And like, let's just pretend that, I, Mike Ippolito, am interested in spinning up my own chain. I have some new idea, let's call it Blockworks chain or something like that. And I need to do a couple of things, right? I've got some design decisions to make. Maybe I am looking at something like pure vanilla proof of stake, or much more likely, I would start with some probably proof of authority type scheme here, which is how do I select my different validators? What's the different asset that I'm going to use to secure it? Like almost like go through the checklist here of if I was spinning up my own Blockworks chain, like what are the different things that I would have to think about, and how does this conception of shared security actually help me achieve that job better?
Yeah, we talked to a lot of validators. Of course, we like that. That's the operators are basically one of them super important, one of the most important participant in shared security because they provided the operator.
Right.
They have the bigger one of them have like a really sophisticated system of scoring the networks. So it's not anything that like you can Google. Of course, it's done case by case, and that approach we need to change. So we are working and creating a system for networks to be basically allocated to some bracket. Like I'll ask you, like, what's your token model and how it's going to be used? What's going to be what parts does your system have? Because in Symbiotic you can have basically infinite amount of faucets to your network. Some of them might be not slashable at all, so you have like some UX liveness part of your network, right? That's going to be just providing people with some predictable outcomes for the interactions with network. Some of it can steal your money. Some of them that can like destroy the whole network. So there's going to be different layers, and some operators might only decide to operate the layers that they're comfortable scoring. Then after we understand the token model and the slashing part that you want to be using, or like the punishment part, then we'll need to understand, like the operator will need to understand the infrastructure that they will need. Because if you have an Oracle system, that's completely different to the ZK coprocessors, right? And the idea here where the shared security really comes into play is that if you have enough protocol starting and creating the best practices with we have a curator entity in our system that basically orients the networks and and creates a list of protocols with added data, not protocols, operators with added data that might be used like compliance, even KYC, geo separation, some buckets for what sort of system do they operate? Do they have experience in that? If it's ML based, some like AI, machine learning, distributed private execution protocol, it requires some different parts to the protocol that's doing market making, right? It doesn't have to be like at every data center, everywhere, proxied multiple, like 100,000 times. So for the network that is coming, they will, with enough scale, they will create basically a benchmark for them to be apportioned to the proper and the most optimized bracket. Like you need this and this. You have the best practices. You can choose between like 3, 4, 5 different models, and you don't have to they're going to be both battle tested, and you don't have to be like an expert in that. You can just use the shelf products that are like good for you.
So basically what we're talking about here is there's this common set of challenges for founders that are spinning up a new blockchain, and instead of starting from scratch at square one, there's this sort of common set of shared basically like almost vendors or outside services that you're going to need, and there's not really like a common framework which scores them and creates this little like list for you. This is almost going to sound like a silly question, but what does the UX look like for me as a founder here? Is there like what format is this information being delivered in? Like, how am I going to see this like list and set of scores? And okay, let's say I'm going to use a ZK coprocessor instead of an Oracle solution, right? Like, where am I finding all this information out? And then maybe I'd love to get into the actual design of Symbiotic, the protocol as well.
Yeah. First, not only blockchains. Second, not only new. It's the important addition here. That's why we call them networks, because they are networks. That's what they are. They are networks in search of decentralization. So it might be Oracle network, it might be market maker network, it might be some threshold cryptography network, or some like any network basically. So not only blockchains, and not new, because the current DeFi, like Ethena is example of that. DeFi is getting more and more complex, so they need like parts that are going to be off-chain. So the Oracle part, the interop part, the part of like some keeper networks or something like that, runners, resolvers. And for every of this every part of this system, the risks are going to be different. So we like restaking and shared security is not only for the protocols that are just starting up, but that want to decentralize some part of they already have. And in terms of UX, well, we'll have to like figure a lot of this out still, because we haven't like restaking is like a concept at this point. We don't have an actual like slashable fully production networks yet. But the idea here is to create because the protocol Symbiotic is really, really thin in terms of what it can do. The market, the ecosystem participants are going to be really important, and one of them is curator, scorer. The titles might may differ, but we expect that to be like it might be handled by LRTs. So you basically go to LRT, you ask them, do you want to give us like your economic security? And they will like create a list of their requirements. You need to have audits, you need to have like this part covered by that and that and that. And after that, they give you money, and the agreed upon list of operators comes to you. Yeah, so the important part of the design Symbiotic is that everything is opt-in. So every relationship is consensual. The task of Symbiotic is just to reinforce the commitments. So if you enter into commitment, you have like clear rules of what you need to do and how you get out. This is like the only part that Symbiotic is going to handle. That's why we designed it in a way to be like really simple, because it's permissionless and you can't do a lot of logic in core while still like retaining the permissionless part, because you're gonna limit yourself.
Hey everyone, this episode is brought to you by Namada, the shielded asset hub protecting the future of the multi-chain. Namada is a chain that's near and dear to my heart because in previous seasons of Bell Curve, we've talked about how the cardinal original sin of most blockchains is not thinking about privacy from the beginning, but also because if we want to onboard a whole bunch of applications, it doesn't work in a default transparency setting. So Namada not only brings about a better future that we all want, but it's going to help onboard a ton of new applications. So Namada introduces a novel shielding reward system. The way that it works is if you hold your assets in the shielded set, you help strengthen Namada's data protection guarantees and collect non-rewards in return. Namada will initially support IBC and Ethereum-based assets, but eventually the idea is for this to expand into a comprehensive hub for all assets. Really, really excited about what the folks over at Namada are doing. I highly recommend that you go and check them out at namada.net. You can follow their mainnet launch, which is soon TM. Very exciting. Tell them that I sent you. Click the link, bottom of the show notes. Hey everyone, this episode is brought to you by Kinto, the safety-first L2 with user-owned KYC and native account abstraction that is accelerating the transition to the on-chain financial system. Now, we've been talking about Larry Fink on this program and how he's been shouting the good word about tokenization to all of his buddies on Wall Street. This is happening. And the very cool part about Kinto is that they are built to accept a whole bunch of assets and a whole bunch of users from the traditional financial system, which current L2s have done an okay job, but there's a lot of room for improvement for onboarding. So it features very nice things like user-owned KYC and native account abstraction that solve some of the biggest blockers around mainstream adoption, namely security and user experience. You can become a founding member at engine.kinto.xyz. If you believe in this on-chain financial system, join Kinto's launch program and thank me later. Cheers, guys. And the link, bottom of this episode. Click it now.
Okay, Misha, take us. This feels like a good time to actually walk us through sort of the different components of the Symbiotic protocol and the different layers. So, from my understanding, there's 5 layers here. There's collateral, which is sort of sitting at the top, this economic security layer. There are vaults, which is the staking layer itself, operators, which maybe you could call it an infrastructure layer, resolvers, and then the underlying networks. And the resolver is probably that was a new concept for me, as kind of this arbitration layer in between operators and the networks ultimately that they're servicing. So you just kind of walk us through the different layers of the stack here and explain the Symbiotic protocol.
Yeah, let's start with the core principles. It's not going to take a lot of time, and then we will move to the more technical stuff. So when we decided to build Symbiotic, the idea was to create a protocol with the least amount of friction for the networks to join. What that means is that our main competitor is native launch. That is long, really hard to do, and sometimes not safe, and in a lot of ways centralized. Like we mentioned, proof of authority and everything like that. So the idea was to make it easier and to make some basically the default solution to decentralize any network. We've started with the most obvious friction point. That is am I doing something wrong selecting shared security versus my native security? Like, does this launch has its own drawbacks? Am I gonna be independent? Like, founders usually start their protocols thinking that it'll be like 10 billion, 100 billion or more protocol, right? And they don't want to be ever starting it in a way that they're going to be subordinate to some other protocol, right? That's why we have a lot of side chains. That's why we get a lot of protocols that are like building overall the same stuff, but with a twist. Because like, yeah, it could have been an app, right? Like, but we've created a whole chain for it. That's because the founders that they want to be independent. So we designed it in a way that Symbiotic can't change the rules of the game. Contracts are not upgradable, and even the surrounding contracts can be made immutable if you want the complete lock on the rules of the game. So yeah, permissionless, it was a really tough challenge because like it 10x's every decision that you make, because you need to think about like, how is it actually accomplishable? Will it limit us? And you think about every application that might exist and like figure out the game theory that will it limit you or not. And yeah, the second one, friction point is that we don't need, like, we should never compete with anyone ever from the networks that we are trying to bring on board. That's why we should never have native staking, roll-ups, data availability, oracles, or anything like that. That's going to be sending a signal that this platform is not neutral, it competes. It's a market participant, it's not a market platform. So yeah, like we throughout the native staking, throughout a lot of other stuff, other ideas that we had at the moment. And the last one is it needs to be modular, because the industry has not been created yet. It needs to be modular in a way that I'm going to be talking about. Like, I'll move a bit to the technical stuff now.
Oh, Misha, so I've got one question for you actually on that. Just so on the neutrality point, this is a challenge that I think a lot of infrastructure apps have, or infrastructure layers have today, which is, on the one hand, everyone wants to be modular and neutral because the apps aren't here. You know, we don't know how these application developers are going to want to build. And so we want to be maximally flexible to them. And we also view ourselves as a platform, so we don't want to be competitive with them. The other side of that argument, though, would be, you know, there are many instances of, hey, we are just going to build it and they will come type deal, where, you know, we're just going to trust that these devs actually end up showing up. And what some infrastructure developers have done is maybe like dog food their infrastructure a little bit. So maybe you could look at something like EigenDA is this, which is say like, hey, you know, what we're doing here is a very new paradigm, and we're not 100% sure that you know, application developers maybe need a little bit of help, you know, with almost like jump starting their imagination with like, hey, here's something where I could build. So how do you view the sort of trade-off of, hey, we want to be maximally neutral and not be competitive, versus, hey, maybe application devs just need a couple examples of how this could work, and kind of like dog fooding your own environment?
There are easier ways to dog food than build the complete
okay.
product and then market it to people. No, that I don't think that's an argument. We will have explainers, we will have SDKs that people can use. And I think that's like for most builders that's going to be sufficient. We don't need to like create our own protocol that's going to be competing with them to just showcase something.
Okay.
You can like, yeah, it's going to be much easier. So yeah, neutrality is really important. We see it a lot in like questions that people ask, like what's going to happen if you think that something is like really influential, or I don't know, like really good primitive. Will you have something like Amazon Originals or Amazon Basics or something, right? Where they just like take something great and like rename it, rebadge it to their own design. Yeah, we have Celestia. We have a lot of other DA solutions that are really great. So I don't think that we need to enter this market ever.
All right, fair enough. Fair enough. I interrupted you though. You're about to get into the technical architecture of Symbiotic. I'd love to understand that a bit better.
No, please do. I'm really passionate about what we're building, so like I can go on and on about that. Yeah, the modular part and the flexible part, it's inevitable in immutable systems because you can't really like hard code everything. You need like some orbiting systems that are going to be used. So we abstracted away a lot of things to stay flexible. One of those things is collateral. So basically you can use any obligation that is like obligation of asset. It can be off chain, it can be on other chain, it can be like on Ethereum if you like. What that gives you is a flexibility to have any collateral that you want to be slashable or non-slashable, to be somewhere else. You don't have to siphon everything to the Ethereum. The important part that people need to understand is the Ethereum is used as an orchestration layer. We just, like, in our opinion, it's the better one. It does not limit anything. Well, the limiting power is really small. So like it's not limited to the Ethereum finality speed. It's not limited to the assets that are on Ethereum. You can use assets on other chains if they support some like account abstraction or escrow contracts, and transport the obligation to the Ethereum side, so the assets can be still used there. They just need to be slashed in a slashable window. That's the only obligation that in a manner that like the network accepts. So yeah, we abstracted this away, and we already see that this brought a lot of like use cases that we like really happy about. Ethena is one of them because you can use any token anywhere, governance or non-governance, for your needs. So yeah, collateral abstraction is a really important part of it. The other that I want to like focus on is the resolvers and the slashers. There is basically two. Well, the resolvers are basically an arbitration layer. When the system receives an eventuality from the network, basically like this guy is like messing things up. The operator, let's punish him in this amount. There might be like cascading or like a group of resolvers that the stakes uses, or a lot of configurations are possible. So the resolvers might be like fraud proof based systems. They might be committees. They might be like straight up multi-sig, as like some systems do use. It might be like your DAO or anything else. The important part, like again, we are not forcing anyone to do anything. We're just enforcing the rules of the engagement when the engagement is mutual. So we already see that this brings a lot of interesting participants. We received a lot of applications from different proving algorithms that are interested in creating resolving systems for the networks, like tailor-made or like frameworks of resolvers that are going to be protecting the stake. Yeah, I'll finish in touch. Yeah, because like the worst thing that you can do for the emerging industry is to limit it by one vision. It might be the vision of like multi-sig that is really stupid and simple. It might be some like really complicated like voting, like prediction market stuff, right? But it doesn't matter actually. Like the stupid it is or like the smart it is, still one size fits all. Like and you can't build an industry. Like just imagine if Ethereum had like just one opcode. Even if like it was like you need to give people like freedom to be creative.
Misha, let's start with, I actually almost want to start with the top of that, which is the collateral layer. And this is something that I still just frankly don't have a super clear mental model on, which is how do you think, and I know this is extremely early days here, but how do you think that application devs are going to think about the different collateral that they use within their system? And I can think of a couple of different, so for instance, what you could do as a one option for economic collateral is to use your own token, right? Which has essentially that's been the de facto for most app chains today, right? They've just used 100% of their own token. I get the benefits to that is, one, you retain, however you want to define this, sovereignty, right? In a sense that the downside of this ultimately is that, during bear markets, especially when people pull capital out of these ecosystems, you have to up the amount of emissions that you're using to incentivize people because the value of your token is falling, and it kind of creates this downward spiral. Now we've got other options in the form of ETH as an asset, which is probably slightly less volatile, and there's obviously a huge amount of basically people that own ETH that want to supply that collateral. So maybe it's like a slightly more stable solution, which you could procure more cheaply. There are other interesting, like frankly, I think Symbiotic, the platform, opens it up to the possibility of something like USDC as well, which is much flatter. It has challenges because it's not a digitally native bearer asset, right? So there's some complexities underneath the hood dealing with something like Circle, and who actually gets the underlying dollars or like the bonds, I suppose, that you're actually slashing. But can you kind of walk us through like your mental model, or how maybe some of the different applications that Symbiotic is working with, about how they are selecting the economic collateral?
Like when we talk about first, like qualification, when we talk about sovereignty, it's not like, I'm not sure that you're gonna lose sovereignty if you use some other tokens. When we talk about sovereignty, we are telling that your consensus contracts are gonna be upgradable by multi-sig outside DAO that is not aligned with you. This is what losing sovereignty looks like. If you have like multiple collaterals and one of them goes to zero, you don't actually care if your basket is like stable enough. It's gonna be perfectly fine for you. You're not losing anything here, but you can be aligning, and this is important. For actually like protocols that have their own tokens with like good circulating numbers and good like oracles and everything like that, they can use their own tokens as well. Yeah, it's going to be great for them. If they want to decentralize some part of it, they can use their own token, a governance token, to do that. But the interesting case here is, like, we see more and more complex structures, like super DAOs in case of like Maker, I think, and a lot of like Aave is doing a lot of stuff in this regard as well. They're creating the whole ecosystem of partnering DAOs that are doing some parts of the protocol for them, or supporting auxiliary system, everything like that. And this might be used as an alignment instrument. We see that like being a good use of that. You can use a basket of tokens with one like being the major one that other networks are going to use, mixed with the less stable ones that are going to be just launching and have like price fluctuations and everything like that. And for complex systems, you'll have multiple facets of that. Like again, UX and liveness, the layer of consensus, the layer of like execution or something like that. So like layer 5, and you might use the different guardians of and different proportion of tokens for each one. So here we have like another token that is used like 99% of the time because you need mass for that. Here you need, like, it's going to be proportionally like 30-70 with your own token. And like once you go up, you can use more and more of your tokens. The permutations here are really like we have a lot of those already in the use cases that are emergent.
Misha, can you unpack that a little? That's a super interesting concept for me. And even to zoom out of shared security and seeing everything that we're talking about, I've always viewed the purpose of equity within a company as alignment. Like even within a very centralized organizational setup like a company, you actually have these, especially as you get bigger, these different competing factions, right? And like it's the different functions of a company that sometimes have like conflicting incentives. So like sales and marketing is sort of a classic example of this, or sales and operations, or whatever. And the way that you align those incentives at the top is you give leaders of each of these different functions equity. And what that does is it neatly aligns everyone with like the overall success of the company, as opposed to myopically focusing on whatever KPIs your department is important for. And I want to map that sort of familiar mental model and concept for people onto this idea of shared security within a protocol like Maker. And frankly, the Maker endgame feels like it evolves pretty constantly. It is relatively complicated. I'm not 100% up on it exactly, but my current understanding is that Maker is a very large, complicated DAO. It does a bunch of things. It has a core thing that it does, and it's actually going to segment some of the like risk and complexity down into different sub DAOs. And so I guess kind of like walk us through hypothetically how using different tokens at different layers of the stack here could better align those incentives. Like
I'll try to be as general as possible because like I'm not sure what's public yet. Okay. You have like multiple DAOs that are going to be using, say, your own Oracle network that is designed for them. Say you have options. And so, like just an outside example, you have options, right? For the options, you might want to use oracles that are going to be like faster than Chainlink ones. Or have like some mix of like price feeds that are going to be composite to every pair, to every subordinate product, like and interconnected between each other, and update with like coordination of like signals, right? When you need to update the first one, the second one goes subordinate to that and waits, like synchronously waits for it. Every protocol, like every DAO can have its own token. But because your token is going to be securing this, like the major token is going to be securing the major part of this like Oracle network, every other protocol is not interested in attacking you, because like they are going to lose the system that's going to be like a basis of their function. And with every part that needs securing, it might be an app chain, right? Where you launch your L3s, where you launch your DeFi primitives, or like any other part of the system that you use for them to actually like start misaligning and like vampire each other and like doing other activities that you want to avoid. You can use the security part to align yourself in a very specific way. So we are just starting that. Like we usually, like when we started designing this protocol, we thought more about we weren't really thinking about app chains, because like that was some far away idea. Like we don't have them actually now. Like in a lot of cases, we have like rollups that are not app specific. But yeah, like this is like actually has a lot of use cases, because every protocol, again, like Ethena, has a lot of parts that are trustful, that need operators to perform tasks, either to be like UX oriented for people to get results within like a specified time, or specify like reliability, or they need some like outside feeds and like off-chain parts and other concepts that are just emergent.
Yeah, I maybe just to tie a bow on this part of the conference, and I want to move on to the work that you guys are doing with Ethena, which is much more public, and we can link a blog in the show notes here. But I'm just fascinated to see how the behavioral impact of that alignment. And in one sense, this already happens a little bit at an ecosystem level within crypto, which is like, hey, we're all part of Ethereum, and even though there's not as much of a direct relationship in between some of the different applications like a Uniswap or Aave or Maker or something like that, everyone, like the common link there is that, okay, we're all building on this shared ecosystem, and probably we all own a bunch of ETH, and when our apps kind of create value, it's an indirect link, but it kind of creates this rising tide fills all boats or lifts all boats type effect. And I would be really interested when you're looking at maybe a more closed off ecosystem, like, or a slightly more tightly linked organization like Maker, and you have these different DAOs that are interacting and able to basically mix and match tokens much more freely. Just the behavioral outcome of that, I think, that just feels like, frankly, a pretty novel experiment and very interesting. So I'm very interested to see how something like that evolves over time. But I'm really interested as well. Usually that would require every one of these like protocols to build their own chain or app chain or rollup that would be like secured by the like fragmented tokens, because you can't actually like secure different risk profiles with the same token without restaking. Like, how would you do that? I just like, I will be securing, just imagine, like, let's make a really simple example. Like, what if we actually have restaking for the rollup, right? With the centralized sequencer. We have like decentralized sequencer part, which is going to be really safe because it handles scheduling, right? Secured by one rollup token. We'll have like some MEV builder, like some PBS version that is going to be secured by the same token with different like risk scenarios. This part can be slashed really easily because they can, like, the obligations that they have might be not fulfilled because of reasons outside of their control, right? And you have another one that's going to be pre-confirmation, which is like even scarier for a lot of people. So you can't make users and stakers opt in into the whole basket. You need to apportion, and like restaking can be used for that as well. And it's really efficient use because like every layer of this pie is opt-in only. So some people will tell, yeah, I'm gonna be securing all of it, and some people will say, yeah, I'm gonna be like just on the scheduling level. I'm not gonna be participating in any risky stuff. And okay.
Yeah.
That brings up so one part of the stack here, which I guess we've like loosely been referring to as like LRTs, in the vernacular so far today, but the way that you talk about this is like vaults, which I actually really like I almost think about it kind of like a morpho vault, if people are familiar with that as a rough analog. But who is ultimately going to be making, so in that exact same scenario that you were describing, where there's a decentralized sequencer, but then there's a pre-conf element, instead of having this entire stack, which maybe you just like secure the entire thing versus like taking different tranches of that. Basically, what we're talking about is tranching out risk, right? And it's kind of like an investment decision at the end of the day, which is like, do I want to take this whole blended risk and yield opportunity versus tranching out different parts of it? And that is the vault layer for Symbiotic. So who are the operators of these vaults going to be, and how's that whole layer of the stack going to look for you guys?
Yeah, vaults are basically the rule book and the accounting. So when you create a vault, you say, yeah, I'm gonna be like the stake is gonna be accounted like that. So like have these sort of tokens and have these sort of like rules about them, and it's gonna be getting rewards in this manner. And use like the mechanics of resolvers in this manner. And if your vault is set up correctly, a lot of networks will join it, like and basically enable it to be restaked through the networks, because networks are going to be interested in limiting their exposure as well. Some of them, at least, like they don't want to be like, if you have network that uses randomized slashing as like a normal function, not normal functioning of business, you don't want to be like, and it can be 100% with some like probability. You don't want to be like using only the tokens that are restaked through that as well. You want some other vault that is gonna be like more secure. So the vaults are basically the streams of with the same rules. So it can so the network can, one LRT can have like 10 vaults with different like layers of risk and different modes of function. Some of them can be mutable, so that the rules are locked like 100%. The only thing that you can do is take out your tokens. Some of them can be upgradable and have proxy availability. Depends, like if you have like value proposition strong enough, it can be upgradable. If you don't have that, yeah, like you might straighten it up being immutable. So yeah, it's not like LRT vaults. It's just vaults that are like technical in a lot of ways.
Got
just
it.
accounting and rules. Yep.
And Misha, who do you see as setting these vaults up? And like who's going to be running them?
LRTs, operators, I don't know, like curators at some point, I think, when they want to like create a vertical alignment, right? That they have like their own operator set, they have their own like staker set, they have their own scoring mechanism for networks to join. Every participant can do the vaults, but I think LRTs and curators and operators are going to be the ones controlling it in a lot of cases.
Got it. Okay, I want to get to this work. Sorry, I keep jumping around here a little bit, but I want to get to the work that you've done with Ethena as a really cool example here, and then I want to conclude actually just in terms of Ethereum, because ultimately what we've been talking about for the sort of highlight of this podcast so far for me has been this idea of alignment and how restaking can create, first of all, decentralized core infrastructure components within a system, but also align the different components within an ecosystem as well. And Ethereum is kind of like the white whale, right, of where there's a lot of opportunity to decentralize core infrastructure, but also to align a diverse set of stakeholders. But I want to focus on Ethena here because we've got a lot of really interesting specifics to dive into there. So can you just give, for folks who might not be familiar with Ethena, the protocol, what it is and how it works, can you just give us like the high level quick summary of what Ethena is, and then we can dig into the work that Symbiotic is doing there?
Yeah, Ethena is a market neutral stablecoin that is based on like long short positioning of Ethereum. So the idea is that if you are long and short any asset, you can like basically be always stable. It gained a lot of traction recently. I think it was the fastest growing asset or stablecoin ever. I'm not gonna like talk a lot about that. I'm interested in the other part of the protocol, but I think the approach is really novel, and like we like to help. And I think that they have a really ambitious timeline in terms of what they're trying to use. So they'll need a lot of supporting systems. They basically what they're doing is they're using options to long short, and for options on scale, we don't have an infrastructure yet that can support like 100 bill in long position, right, or in short position. So that they are trying to basically help decouple themselves to any limit that they want to use. For that they need they need every primitive node to man, like some more than others, I think. But again, our system is not to analyze if it's gonna be successful or not. Our system is to accommodate. That's the most important part, because like if we start to score, we will become opinionated, and that's like the worst thing that can happen. But yeah, they have plans on launching. I'm not sure it's going to be on chain or off chain. Like app chain or not app chain. Perpetual DEXs. I would concentrate on market makers, the part that's going to be really interesting, because again, you can align them. We talked about this with you. You can align it with LP tokens. So the collateral that's going to be might be used in aligning the market makers might be LP token with Ethena on the other one side, and like the other token on the other side. The security assumptions here needs to be refined, but like our system is designed to create infinite alignment structures for that. If it's closed somewhere, but it can be still used like for providing liquidity somewhere. And yeah, like the other ideas are like a bit further away, I think. Like that's my personal opinion. It's not the opinion of the company. We don't have opinions. But yeah, like the uncollateralized lending is really something that you can use, and it's gonna be like functionally devoid of operators. If I understand like what the possible designs are. So like restaking, like this is a wild concept, but shared security can be used without operators at all.
Misha, I want to so because they're like Ethena as a protocol is super interesting, and like personal opinions aside, I want to get a sense from your perspective of working with Ethena. What are the big challenges that they're undergoing, especially as like their protocol transitions? Like what are they either like, I don't know, strategic drivers for them, or especially what are the sort of centralizing parts of their infrastructure today? For basically, as you described, like Ethena runs a tokenized, they basically have a tokenized version of the basis trade. And so the infrastructure as it exists today is, there are definitely parts of it which could be risk vectors, right? Just like any financial product. And so kind of give us a sense of like, what are the parts of underneath the hood of Ethena that Symbiotic can kind of help with, and then or what is a priority for them to sort of get more decentralized or aligned on, and then like where is Symbiotic actively helping with that?
Yeah, we are starting with interchain. So this is like for upchains, it's an analog of like dipping your fingers into shared security. Yeah, we're testing the waters currently. I'm not, I can't really like say what's the priority under the hood, because like we're in the process of like actually launching the mainnet currently from our side. So I think the important part for Ethena and everyone else is to like get a clear idea on how to go production, because we don't actually have like anything that is production yet in the industry. So it will take some time for them to try and do the stuff that is like for Ethena currently they're like looking into DVM. It's a layer 0 concept, and we've received like maybe 3 or 4 other applications for the DVM interop networks. It's a really like this concept is on the easier side, but we need to go through it to get to the hard stuff. And it's already shows the alignment, because like our vault of you mentioned that like the stable coin part, the alignment with the dollar value for the interop really makes a lot of sense, because you don't want to have like fluctuating assets as something as fluctuating as governance tokens, securing the most vital part of your infrastructure, like being the bridging or interop.
Yeah, that's one of the challenges of I guess in terms of what collateral that you're picking, it's almost I mean, I guess this is still like a relatively big open question, but you essentially want some amount of security, and you probably denominate that in dollars, but the collateral that we have on chain fluctuates quite a bit in price there. So you're almost taking on some amount of like, I guess what you historically categorize as Forex sort of risk, which I guess is the interesting part about dollars.
Yeah, if you have a blockchain that has CDP that issues token based on your governance token, and your blockchain is secured by your own governance token, you have zero Forex risk.
You just described the dollar, my friend. You just described dollars. Yeah, we've
Yeah,
actually cracked that
of course.
code.
Yeah, like yeah, uh, the risk exists, but using diversification, using other market instruments, you can counter that. But like we are not in search of like the perfect solution here. We're in search of the solution that is more optimal than the one we have now. And that is because like currently you can't use, like you can't switch your consensus model easily. You can't create a tiered system, or it's going to be really hard for you and you're going to be alone on that. But here, like with this in the system that we are trying to do, the experience of previous people is visible, and like the networks, it's visible. It's like you have people that help them already in the ecosystem, like resolvers. I see that, yeah, those guys are using these resolvers. I can use that as well. Yeah. So the expert part of it, the visibility part of it is going to be really important, but it only works through scale. And that's why we try to create the protocol with the least amount of friction, because it doesn't make any sense like if we have 10 protocols.
Right. Misha, I want to transition here to talking about Ethereum in general. And, something that Miles and I have been talking about on this season is basically is trying to differentiate for folks. Because again, I think there was a huge emphasis for people on this idea of, using Ethereum as security to secure external chains, right? That was like a lot of how people initially started thinking about this. But I think a part of the reason why folks on the Ethereum side of things have been really interested is this sort of shift. Again, not really using a lot of the verbiage that we've been talking about today, but hey, there's another use case for shared security or restaking would be actually expanding the scope of what existing Ethereum validators can do beyond the consensus duties that they have today. And maybe that can unlock a bunch of cool things. And that's roughly what like pre-comps have been, right? Which is, hey, Ethereum proposers can make these commitments, and then through this restaking mechanism, those can be enforced. And that can allow us to do all of these cool things. Namely, there's an enormous amount of focus on like L2 interoperability and based sequencing. And that I think there are some folks which are extremely excited about that. The last episode of this show that just went live is a discussion between Hasu and Justin Drake, and they had sort of contrasting viewpoints on this, to be honest. And they're Hasu was a little bit more of the mind that look, pre-comps are definitely very interesting. I don't want to paraphrase, go back and listen to what he said. But ultimately, there's not a huge amount of opportunity for Ethereum validators to opt into doing all of these other things. And like maybe the opportunity size isn't gigantic there. And also for something like pre-comps, the complexity is very high. So we have to consider that in terms of what this implementation would be. And then, Justin Drake has been extremely interested in this and has sort of said, hey, guys, we have this huge problem with the roll-up centric roadmap for Ethereum, which is that we didn't really think about interoperability very much beforehand. And we're fragmenting liquidity, and, transactions between different L2s aren't composable. And so this would be a really neat way to solve that. And maybe there are other things that we can ask our Ethereum validators to do. Where do you fall on this entire debate spectrum here? I'd be curious. Are you very excited about the sort of pre-conf possibilities? Do you think that there are other big categories outside of even pre-comps that we could be asking Ethereum proposers to do? Like, what are your thoughts on this entire general topic here?
I see both sides of this argument. Yeah, like overloading consensus is not great. It brings like it brings centralization because like the hardware requirements grow. It brings misalignment. Yeah, but it can like enable really interesting mechanics. So like I see both sides of it. Most of the applications that we receive right now are completely isolated to validators. Validators don't do anything. Like proposers for Ethereum don't do anything. I think that before it goes, like our system supports pre-comps. Like you can use like really customizable collateral as I described. right? You can link them to validators as well. But I think before the industry comes to some idea of how it can be achieved safely, like I don't actually have an opinion on that. Like we have guys like Justin and that are getting paid for that. So I leave that to them. My like goal here is really simple, to accommodate what they came up with. That's the whole idea. If I had an idea about like how to do that correctly, I would be doing that.
That's very fair. What about just looking around at Ethereum and the various different sets of stakeholders today? I mean, do you see opportunities for do you see like interesting opportunities for leveraging Symbiotic that might not be obvious today? So pre-comp's obviously something that people are extremely excited about, but one of the aspects around restaking to me that I feel like is exciting is looking at different centralizing parts of infrastructure that support these different blockchain ecosystems and trying to make it more decentralized, right? Like bringing it back to your point about this is what we're ultimately trying to do here. So when you look at something like Ethereum, and that could be something around like the MEV supply chain or different pieces of core infrastructure like Oracle networks that maybe DeFi relies a lot on, like what are some of those areas where you can look at this and say, man, this is just a huge screaming opportunity to improve the decentralization of the protocol?
Yeah, like all of the above.
Yeah.
we basically like every part of it, like without being negative to any like current market participants, we are lagging in terms of decentralization. This is the important part of the system. Like when we stop doing that, like once every couple of 3 years, we get Terra or we get like FTX or we get something, and people are saying, how would we predict like how we can avoid that? Yeah, you decentralize. You don't put your faith into any one entity. That can be upgraded. The politics can change. That's why we had like a boom of you probably like you 100% remember the TradFi like boom where you got like 15% on your stable coins, and you never knew like where they went.
Yeah.
People were like fine with that. They had like the bigger of them had like billions in TVL, and that's how like how many times do you need to repeat that before you learn? Like decentralization is important. And I think that the main goal here is for us is to create a system where the greedy parts of our system are like satisfied while doing the right stuff. So stakers are rewarded like well. Networks get their security cheaper than they would before. And while doing that, they can decentralize, like actually decentralize safely. So if we have like networks satisfied with the cost cuts and UX upgrades, stakers satisfied, they're doing like they're getting rewards that are satisfactory to them, will get an actual security that is sustainable.
So I completely agree with that sentiment. And for folks who are out there who are listening and that message just resonated, you know, I would personally I would love to see some of the core parts of the value chain on the MEV side today decentralized. So if anyone's out there who feels like they have an interesting an interesting idea for how they can apply the Symbiotic platform or restaking generally to decentralize some of these core components, I highly recommend that you go talk to Misha or talk to me. You've listened to the MEV season on this podcast before, and I'm happy to make connections. I would love to have an impact there personally. Even I just also care about that quite a bit. Misha, I've got one more. Maybe we can conclude here, and I would love to get your sense around how you view the different networks that Symbiotic is already supporting and going to continue support as an ecosystem itself. Like one way that you could look at this is just to say, hey, there are these networks that need almost like a back end kind of setup, right? They've got a very specific configuration that they're going to want around their tokens, the different operators and services that they opt into, and that's what Symbiotic does. We orchestrate and align all of those different things. The other way that you could look at it is say, hey, actually, eventually we're going to have a number of different networks that Symbiotic is supporting. And hey, wouldn't it be cool actually if we provided services between these networks, like maybe being a little bit more prescriptive about what interop could look like, for instance, or something like that. So are you viewing these networks as kind of standalone entities, or are you thinking about creating an ecosystem with value-added services for the networks that you're supporting?
Yeah, the second one. Like we don't know what shared security is. Like we have some idea, right? We understand that, yeah, there might be some like synergy between networks if they launch on the same platform, right? There might be something else. They might be, I don't know, like the service, like the scoring services is like a low hanging fruit, but we don't know which once we make this pipeline of launching and decentralizing networks visible, like actually visible, we don't know what we will find. We already have some ideas on how to create even more added value after we have like some mass of networks that are launching with Symbiotic. But yeah, this remains to be seen. Like our goal is to be really flexible on designing the rules and designing the interactions, because once we get like something extra, this extra will restrict your movement after that. So we need to we are in a lot of ways like building our own like Ethereum in a lot of ways. Like you need to like be really careful about like adding some functionality. So at least for the first version, we will outsource all of it. We'll help users, we create use cases, but we are not going to be doing it ourselves. We're going to support the builders, but yeah, this is like the bush side of the dark forest growing.
We all love a dark forest analogy on bell curve. Misha, finally, give us a sense of what the timeline looks like here. So obviously Symbiotic has already been active today. You've got some great launch partners, but like when can we expect this to be fully live and operational?
Yeah, well, the optimistic timeline that I have is that the core contracts, everything will be ready somewhere around end of Q3. So quite soon.
Wow.
Yeah, we have a really great engineering team, so like we expect to move quite fast. Most of it is ready already. The core part is being audited as we speak. But because it's immutable, it will take a lot of audits and a lot of like verification and even contests for us to just like make sure that everything is 100%, like not 100%, but it's sufficiently secure.
Awesome. Well, that's a extremely fast timeline. So congratulations. I mean, we'll congratulate you, when it launches, but that's really exciting. And finally, for folks who might be, have been listening to this podcast and they've got a network, maybe an existing network where they feel like they could use Symbiotic, or they're thinking about launching something new and this has resonated, what's the best way for people to either find out more, reach out to you, or connect with the good folks at Symbiotic about what you're doing?
Yeah, we have head of ecosystem Felix Push, which is like quite a known figure in our industry. But for people that don't know him, we have an application form on our website, and we try it will take some time for us to get back to you. But yeah, like reach out. We are happy to help.
Awesome. Yeah, Felix is a friend of the show. He's been on a couple of times, I believe. That he's got the moniker Godfather of Liquid Staking. He was actually fun fact for listeners who skipped that season. He wrote the original paper on what he called delegation vouchers, I believe, back in 2019 or something. So awesome, Misha. Well, I really appreciate it. Super excited for the work that you're doing at Symbiotic. I appreciate you coming on the show to talk to our listeners about it. And yeah, we'll have to do it again sometime soon.
Yep. Hopefully on the launch date.
Yes. Soon TM. All right, my friend. Talk to you soon. Cheers.
Hey everyone, hope you all enjoyed today's episode. Want to give a final shout out to Namada. Again, a team that is near and dear to my heart. They are building the shielded asset hub, which is protecting the future multi-chain. Talked a little bit about how that works in the mid-roll, but for now, what I would highly recommend that you do is go check them out. They're in their mainnet launch phase. You can follow along with everything at namada.net. You can start rewarding yourself by shielding your actions and strengthening data privacy for all across the multi-chain. So thanks again, Namada, for all the great work that you're doing.